From LPM,
Louisville Public Media.
Support for the Louisville Public Media podcast incubator comes from the Community Foundation of Louisville, helping donors in our community establish charitable funds to meet philanthropic goals, creating opportunities to give more through scholarship, charitable checking, and donor-advised funds, and helping donors create a charitable legacy through their estate plan. More at cflouisville.org.
Sprinkle Sparkle contains adult themes and may not be suitable for all ages.
Access to pleasure and indulgence is our right and we're entitled to it. It's not a favor that somebody's granting us. It's not a reward. It's just like why we're here. My hope is that people will listen to this and relate, even in the ugly parts, because there's something sparkling about that too. This is Sprinkle Sparkle, and I'm Nubia Bennett. And today we're actually talking to Kisha.
Kisha Hayden. Some may remember me as Kisha Ellis, my maiden name.
Who is the owner of many businesses, but the one she's proudest of is Naturally Me 502, which is a skincare line that offers natural products for beards, for hair, for skin, for all the things, right?
I'm also a mother, of course, of 3. And I guess I'm a evolving woman, I guess is what I like to think of myself as.
We are talking to her today. It was a lovely, lovely conversation about evolution of who she is and who she was. And watching her, like I've known her a really, really long time. Like I think we might have went to like summer camp together in elementary school maybe. And, you know, if you're familiar with the Louisville community, you know that like there's like half a degree of separation with everybody. So if you knew somebody or went to school with somebody's cousin or something, you've kind of watched them, especially with social media and stuff. You've kind of watched them grow up with you, even if you didn't end up in the same spaces forever and ever and ever, right?
Because I'm going through a lot of different stages of life that have turned me into the little lotus I am, which is a part of my logo. So it means a lot to me, like a blooming, blossoming woman. That's all I can think of is to describe myself.
Ooh, I love it already. That's exciting. You're an evolving
We had a
lotus.
beautiful conversation about what her evolution has looked like from having children and being married at a really, really young age and growing into the woman that she is still becoming with grown children and looking 12, of course, because if you see her, she doesn't age. But as she's growing into herself, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a business owner, a partner, a mother, a sibling, and she gives a beautiful definition of pleasure as she's learning to center herself. Now that her kids are mostly grown and now that she's growing into new relationships and her business, which has been around for a few years, more than a few years at this point, watching all of it evolve together and how she centers pleasure in that process.
So to you, when I say the word pleasure, what does that mean?
Well, as a woman that's passionate about anything that I do, pleasure is going to mean me doing something, or to me, it means doing something that makes me feel good. So that could be so many different things, of course, but there's many different ways that you can give yourself pleasure, stimulate yourself, stimulate your inner creativity. And that's what, to me, pleasure means. For me, it's like stimulating whatever parts of me need that form of stimulation at the moment that make me feel good. and centering, you know, those things, focusing on those things, I guess.
I like that. I love it, actually. This idea of it. Yes, sex can be part of it, because I mean, that's a part of you, right?
Right.
But the idea more broadly that you're stimulating whatever parts of you need to be centered. So it's almost like doing a full body scan. I imagine, I guess I'm visual, so I imagine doing this whole body scan, like internally and externally, like what part, like, you know, when they you get a meditator, you get a massage or something like that, and they're like, close your eyes and just picture the insides of your body and go to those places that need to be centered. That's what I picture.
Yeah, because you're a whole being with all these different senses, and you have so many different, like, hearing, auditory things. It can be pleasure. Visually, you need to be pleasure. Like, it's so many different ways, but we, you know, get conditioned to kind of go in one place when we hear a certain word.
I love it. That sounds like a good definition. I can rock with that for the remainder of this conversation for sure. I love it. Then that goes back for me to this idea around you being an evolving woman, right? And this lotus flower that's in bloom. And so, like, of course, your imagery is just perfect, because I think about what that tells me is that maybe this relationship to pleasure that you have now hasn't always been the case. So can you tell me more about that? What's been your relationship?
Yeah, so because I started out early into motherhood, which is, I've wanted to be a mother since I was a kid, too young to even think about it, but I love babies. So because I started into motherhood at 19, going on to 20, and then after that, it was a baby at 20, and then 24, then we were married. So my idea at that time of what made me feel good was simply taking care of other people. Like, that's my nature too. So I've had to learn to put me in there somewhere. And I didn't do that. You know, I just didn't focus on doing that when my children were younger. You know, now they're two are off to college and one's in high school. So it's different now. I can kind of center myself more. I am a person who puts other people before myself, whatever they need. If I see that they emotionally need something, physically need me to do something. With my kids, I thought, your kids come before whatever you need. You know, that was just my way. So I didn't get a chance to. And then when I was married, it was whatever your partner needs, whatever the household needs. So you don't center yourself like you should. You're not really focused on your pleasures. It's everybody else's than yours. So as I've, like you said, evolved, like this little lotus, and I had to go through lotuses they're in the mud. They're in the bottom of the water. They're in the mud is where they grow, and they reach for the sun. So I've had to, like, go through this whole process of, like, coming out of the mud, you know, no longer being married. Not that was mud, but, you know, it was a whole growth process. Like, we both grew, and coming out of that to who I am now. Like, now my pleasures come before, because if I'm not okay, if I'm not pleasured, if I'm not taking care of me, then I don't do a good job with what my kids need. I don't do a good job with what my parents or anybody else needs. So I've learned that I have to take care of my pleasures first, and then everyone else's.
Yeah. So you talk about how you know, especially having, because I understand, because I wasn't 19, but I was pretty close. So I totally understand that. So that was your definition of adulthood, even, like, when other people were like, oh, you're adulting if you're doing this. And you're like, no, I'm adulting because I got babies running after me right now. That's what I got. And that was your introduction to adulthood. But even, I guess, zooming out and going back from there, like, because we get this conditioning somewhere, right? And for better or worse, this is value neutral. So I'm not saying like this is conditioning that is bad or good or anything.
Right.
How has your family of origin, like your family you grew up with, or even your chosen family, right? Because, you know, there's people that you've been, that's been in your life your whole time that you ain't blood related to, so community even. Right. How has that impacted how's that shaped your relationship to pleasure seeking or receiving in any way?
So I watched in my family, my mother, who still does it, she puts everything before herself. So even still to this day, and we have to tell her, no, mommy, you need to take care of you. You need to stop and do this. But my father's much older than her, so she takes care of my father. She's it's always been her children. Like she tells us, we have an invisible umbilical cord still connected to her. And so she's serious about that. She feels whatever we need. She knows what we need before we need it. Yeah. And she's so like, that was where we get and we talked about it, like that's where we get the whole always doing for everybody before we do for ourselves. We get that from her, good or bad, like you said. That's where we get it from. And it's for me, I've learned, and we've had the conversation with her and me and my siblings, because we're all women, we've had the conversation of how healthy or unhealthy that is, and how that's not always the best thing for you in your health and your needs if you put everybody else before self. And it's just that part of us that's like those nurturing women, and you tend to do it without even realizing that you're doing it. Like, I don't care if it's somebody out on the streets. I'm always stopping my car trying to help them. And I'm like, you know, that can be unsafe too. So you have to really like, and literally I watch my mother do that all the time. So I know where I get it from. I know where. But we have these conversations where we've had to say, how can we not do the same thing, to where we end up, you know, down the road trying to be 70 saying, I need a vacation, or I need to go here and there, things you should have did, you know, when you were younger, or had the chance to, had the time, more life in you, you know, more energy for it. So
you don't want to regret it. Yeah. So you saw some things that you embodied, right? So you embodied that growing up, and not, again, not saying that that's bad or good. It's just what you saw, and you embodied. Obviously, you have children in college, you know, which is great, and in high school. So you've been successful, right, in the raising of these children. So I think some of that. That's why I said I don't like to label any of this good or bad, because you successfully raised 3 beautiful children. But so we know that your experience in putting other people first has also given you your new found experience in putting yourself first, because of opportunity arose. But you still have to see it though. So when you think about throughout your life, whether it was when you were a kid or leading up to now, who is there anyone that you remember embodying this relationship with pleasure that you are like, that's it, that's the one, that's what I want?
I've never really thought about it or had anybody that I paid that much attention to. I thought I want to do it that way until you said it. I realized one person that I have always said, and that'd be my cousin Keisha. Absolutely. Picking up your bags and traveling the world, literally. Yes. And finding out who you are on your own. Like just limitless. Yeah, absolutely. That's and she did without me even thinking. Like, I guess subconsciously, I don't even realize. I'm just now really like putting it together that she did influence a lot of my growth and changes, even into my natural hair journey. Getting more into, we were always a very Afrocentric family. But when she went to college and got more into it, it ended up, you know, we end up having like way deeper conversations and getting more back to that part of ourselves. And when she took off and literally travel the world, that was me going, what's holding me back? Like, why am I not doing A, B, C, and D? I can't keep using my kids as excuses and this and that as excuses. Like, yeah, that's who I think of.
Yeah. And I think I'd have to agree. I think even because even in watching her, just literally, because I mean, she had some kind of like she had some kind of professional. I mean, she was a professional out here in these streets, and just for all intents and purposes, Kedra King, right? Just making sure, right? For those of us, because we're talking about the same person, but other people are like, okay, well, who are we talking about? Who's but Kedra? Yeah, no, But
you're right. I forgot all about that. Political advisor.
She was doing all the things, and she was everybody's goals, right? And she said,
"Yep,
I'm out." I'm out and I'm about to live my whole best life. You can hit me and we can maybe have a conversation. I might consult on a few things, but I'm out. And so,
and imagine how many people, had something to say about leaving that career life and going to Africa and India and Thailand, like, Asia. Like, people were just probably like, are you crazy? Like, how you gonna have money to do? And trust me, we had the conversations where she has, had people say those things or worry about those things. And she was just like, I'll figure it out as I go. And she did, like, being in different countries and literally connecting with people and making ends meet or staying with people. And I was just like, there is no limit to what we can do or a limit to our pleasures. We put limits on it. And we think we can't do this or we don't deserve this or we can't have this.
But I mean, even like if you're not able to immediately go travel the world, right? Like, maybe some of us can't go travel the world. Right. It makes me think about even your journey, right? Into your business, right? And would you like to talk more about that? Because I don't want to tell your story. You can tell your story.
I mean, that was a leap. I used to have this thing where I would tell myself, like, it looks scary, but frogs just leap. They leap to the next pad. Like, just leap, just take the leap. And it was me just really starting. My children had eczema really bad, especially my girls. And I have, like I said, through Kedra talking more to me about getting back to our roots. And of course, she's vegan, but at the time she wasn't. But we still would talk about natural cures and medicine. And so with that, it introduced me to just not wanting to use all the products that they were prescribing for my children's eczema, because it was changing their skin color. It wasn't really helping. It wasn't helping with their moisture. The products they give are not necessarily for Black skin. So it would deal with itch, but not with, we need moisture. Our skin needs moisture. And that's a part of eczema, is you get dry. So that introduced me into looking more into butters and oils, especially from Africa, and using those products and how to incorporate them into my children's skincare to help. And I noticed, like, how much their skin changed and how the doctor was like, what are you doing to their skin? Because this is crazy, the improvements. And so I would start to make products and sell them on Facebook or tell people about it. And then all of a sudden it was, why don't you sell it? Why don't you do this and that? So I just decided, okay, maybe I will, because I had already made bracelets and sold them, made earrings and sold them. So it was just doing something else, you know what I mean? And so I did. And from Facebook, it turned into me having a website I've been doing it since 2015. And really before that, but 2015 was when I opened my website. But that was my leap. And that was one of my leaps that I refused to give up on until I can't. You don't give up on your business until you know that you're not doing anything, like you're not bringing in anything or it's not going anywhere. So that is my biggest pleasure, really, is my business.
But and it just made me think of what you were saying about Kedra too, about how when she decided she was going Europe or India or Africa or wherever in the world she decided she wanted to go. I don't see it as that much different from you deciding I'm not going to work a regular job. I remember you making this announcement even on social media, like I'm not working a regular job. You did that cleaning business. You didn't even mention that. You was cleaning. Like you are the string of entrepreneurial businesses. But like this idea that you were like, but it was all in the support of this dream that you had, right? And this evolving thing that you are saying, I want to do this. And like, you were like, I'm gonna, come in and clean. I mean, you were like cleaning apartments when people had moved out, like industrial places. You were like,
Airbnb,
all the thing. And then every time you've moved, you're like, y'all, I'm scared. Because I mean, I love that you document so much of it on social media because you're like, I'm scared, y'all. I'm about to do it. I got a space now. I'm about to do it like every single time. And you're like, I'm taking another leap. And sometimes they're big leaps. Sometimes they're small leaps. But I mean, to me, that's the same as your cousin literally taking leaps from country to country. Right. I mean, you're doing the same thing, right? Like, it's a leap from small space, big space, job to this is my work to like, those are scary big leaps, especially with 3 kids.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Like, wait,
especially altering your income. Right. Like altering my income, because even though my ex, I had the luxury, I can say at one point, we got to the point where he was like, if you do your business, the bills are fine. We had to get to that point, of course. But in getting to that point, then I could say, I don't have to, because I was working for the state. A lot of people remember seeing me at Bowman Field doing their driver's license. And I mean, my parents was like, are you serious? Like, you're going to, I left right before, what is the word they say? Right before I would have been vetted, I guess they say. Like I left right before my retirement would have set in and been the max. And everybody was like, are you serious? Like, you have to think about the long road. Like, you leaving security. And that's the thing, like most of our older generation, that's all they can think about is the security. Even though my father was a business owner before and everything, they still think about the security of the futures for their children. And so, yeah, everybody thought I was losing my mind. But my ex was like, if that's what you want to do and everything's straight, go ahead. So that was that change of income when you start a business. Absolutely. And then having days where you are like, should I continue? What am I doing? Yeah. You have those days, like the memes say, where you wonder if you made the right choice. Like, this is too hard. Oh my gosh. And then you have the highs. But like you said, I never realized, it's funny you don't realize something people say it. I never realized that I even documented the leaks to where people know.
Yeah, no, I mean, to the point, I try to do it on purpose so that I can, which has been a lot harder to do, because I think the more projects you're managing, I think it's harder to do. I think that's harder to document because you're like, wait, am I talking about this or am I talking about that? But I think when it's your biggest pleasure or your biggest leap that you're making, and what you're doing has been a huge leap. I think it's helpful even for everybody else, because people only see the wins. And they don't know when people are like, oh, this is crazy.
Right.
Like, this is crazy. Yes. And so
and they'll ask you, I think I get the question all the time, like, when you started your business, well, how did you just leave your job? How did you just, and I'm like, I don't really have the answer for that, minus you really have to just take the risk. I mean, being an entrepreneur is a risk. You just really have to do it, or you'll keep saying, should I do it?
How is that relationship to social media, right? Having so much that is valuable to you there. How has that impacted your relationship to pleasure? Because people are watching, you're watching people. I mean, which in either direction?
Like you said, people said it to me about I have a mystery to me. Excuse me. And I've never really thought I did. Like, I really don't think I do, but people say it. So I'm like, okay, I accept that, I guess. I have parts of me that I keep to myself or not for social media. I'm still very like, it's weird. I'm in between probably conservative on some things and not on other things, but I think people sometimes tend to only show, like you said, the highlight reels, and they don't tend to show like or speak on, which not that you have to, but I don't think it's real for me to just show the best parts of me or the best parts of my life and not give those times where, like I've talked about, the imposter syndrome of feeling like I don't deserve this, or how am I supposed to, who am I to be here? You know, you have those type of feelings and stuff. And I think social media has been one of those things where I try to weigh, is this for social media? Is this, you know, not for social media? My kids let me know what they don't want on social media, like their faces and stuff. Like, mama, you can't post this, you can't show this.
Yeah.
And I've been very, I guess I have, like, whenever I've moved, got a house, or even when I left my marriage, a lot of people did not know that. And I didn't feel like I'm one of those people where I don't feel like I have to tell people that I'm not close to. So it was something people gradually understood or came to understand as I said certain things or showed certain things. And it was like, oh, I guess so-and-so, this happened or that happened. They had to put it together themselves. And I guess that's the mystery, but I'm like, I don't, you know, for me, it's like there's certain parts I feel like you sharing, and some things you share if you want to, or you slowly share, or so, and that's been a part of pleasure for me though, like keeping things pleasurable, kind of keeping certain parts of yourself to yourself or to your partner or to your children or to your business or to your, like, I don't give away everything. You know, I feel like you always got to leave a little something. You know, you always have to leave. I guess that is mystery. Then I guess you have to leave a little mystery. You have to leave a little something to yourself, because that's a part of pleasure, is like leaving something for yourself. And if you give every aspect of your life, every emotion, every trial and high, if you give it all to all these eyes, then what are you leaving for yourself? Like, I have a lot of goals that I accomplished, and I'm hooray for me in my house. You know, don't nobody know that I've hit this goal that I meant to hit. Like, I'm one of those people where I don't feel like I have to, and I don't want to give every single thing away to social media or to, I mean, my friends will tell you, I don't know what kids should do. It's like, sometimes I just don't, like, I don't always, like, I keep so much, I guess, to me until I'm ready to say it, or I feel like I need to say it. But it's for me, like, that's mine. You know, it feels good to me. I'm happy for me.
But I think there's something to that, right? Because it's not necessarily that you are saying, I don't want to give this at all. It's like, I want it to be mine to give, as opposed to being like, oh, I just bought a new house. Yay, everybody should know right now. Or I got me a new boo. Hey, everybody should know right now. Like, I mean, of course, there are people who feel that way and they want to celebrate with people right away. But I think the difference isn't, what's better isn't whether you do it right now or you do it later. It's you chose to do it. And I think holding what's yours and being like, this is mine. So I'll either say it right now to everybody, or I'll say it, I don't know, next week or never, depending on how I feel. But I think the bigger pleasure, it lies in the fact that it's yours.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, and some people are a really open book. And I am one of those people where people tend to open up to me more than I end up opening up. And it takes me time. I mean, I guess I'm just one of those people where it takes me time to peel back layers, because and that may come from just always worrying about what everybody else has going on. So I don't I peel back my layers when I need to, or slowly lift. What are your layers you need to peel back? Like that's how things end up being for me. Like people come to me just trying to peel back layers and talking, and for whatever reason, people open up to me. So I have people who say, well, you don't even open up as much, or it takes you a really long time. I'm like, I never noticed that. I'm so busy taking in whatever people say or give to me. I've never noticed that I'm not doing it at the same time. Because I always feel like you said, I feel like the pieces that I do give to social media or to the public eye or whatever that I've talked about over time, I always feel like, well, I have gave away stuff. I said this and that and this and that. And felt like it was, something.
Yeah, no, it is. It's what you decided you wanted to give. And I think that is the cool part, is that we're like claiming what I'm hearing you say, and what I'm hearing other folks say is, it's like, I want to have agency over what I give or don't give, what I do or don't do. And I think that there's so much pleasure in that. It's like, we haven't been able to have that kind of agency, and we're like, nope, I'm gonna tell you what I want to do, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna tell you or not. And that centers me.
I'm Nubia Bennett, and this is Sprinkle Sparkle.
Support comes from the Eye Care Institute and Butchertown Clinical Trials, where they strive for diversity, equity, and inclusion within their staff, patients, and clinical trial participants. To learn more, visit butchertown.clinic.
The news never stops, but sometimes you need to. Follow the WFPL Daily News Briefing Podcast, and we'll get you back up to speed every morning. Follow us here in your podcast app, or see more at wfpl.org/daily news.
We are back. And this is Sprinkle Sparkle, and we are talking to Kisha Hayden.
How has your relationship to pleasure changed, though? I mean, because, the world stopped. Like, Beyonce told the world to stop when she dropped the album, but the world stopped on March 13th, 2020, for real. So how has that, because the world changed for so many people, and it's still, obviously changing now. How has that impacted either the way your relationship to pleasure, the way you seek it, or anything since the pandemic? If at all.
I think it seems like, it was March 2020. God, it don't seem like it. But I think it made me, and a lot of people actually, when I see people talk about it, I think it made people realize that they have pleasures like right in front of them, or you were forced to take the time because you had the time now. You were sitting in the house. You started to see, which I had also myself. I was gardening. I had a whole garden going. I had watermelon and greens and cabbage, like all type of stuff. Like I ended up doing that. And you guys, you've seen people like at home building stuff or spending way more time with family. And you started to realize that you had some pleasures right at your fingertips that you took for granted, maybe the time. You know what I mean? Like we had to be more aware of time. And it actually was good for somebody like me, because I'm kind of like a introvert / extrovert. So it really was not much change as far as that, but it felt good to like, I don't know, I feel like everybody was just not worried about moving really fast and doing this and that. And our pleasures was like sitting in the house with our feet up or watching Netflix and being outside, like, but in your own domain. Like it really, it changed it in that way. And then it also changed it in a way where I realized, I need to travel a little more. Like I need to actually go places and do stuff that I've been wanting to do and not, make excuses because you don't know. Like when something changes like that on a big scale like that, it makes you go, okay, anything could happen. And you never know. you never know what could happen next. Like, why are we not taking advantage of this entire thing called life? We just end up working and doing this and doing that, and we leave out actually like taking it all in. So so it was March. I actually started, because when my kids were little, I never went anywhere. People think that's crazy. I'm like, no, I did not travel.
Same.
I never been anywhere. And me and even as a couple, we didn't travel. We didn't go anywhere. We didn't have a honeymoon, none of that. So single, it was like, okay, I want to travel. These are things that I want to do. I'm going to make sure I do them. And then when the pandemic hits, you're like, okay, well, can I do it? Yeah, you still can. You just have to do it different. You have to do it carefully. You have to do it, so me and who I date, I was like, these are the places that I want to go. These are the things I want to do. I'm going to start doing them. And when you have the vibe match of, well, just let's go. Let's do.
Yeah.
You don't have no excuse anymore.
No,
your
you
kids
just gotta go.
Like, yeah, you just gotta go. I can't say, oh, my kids need me. My kids need this.
They like, bye,
okay,
mom. See?
Yes. Like, what do you mean? We fine. We can take her.
Just have some groceries in the house,
Yes, that's such a shock to get to that place where and then you come home and they like, the house is clean and they done cooked and I'm like, what? Like, it hits you like, what? I can actually like move around. Yeah. So it changed stuff, but it made you, I think it made you more aware of what you need to do for yourself or with family or with friends. Like, it just made everybody like, dang, we need to commune, I think. Yeah, and do stuff. Yeah.
And go scratch some things off some lists or something. Yeah. So now I don't even like to say the world's getting back on, because this world is that's a whole nother podcast, a whole nother show, a whole nother conversation for another day, right? But as things, I'll put it like this: as things speed back up, because whether they should or not, again, is a whole nother conversation. But as things speed back up, and I don't know about you, but life it come at you fast now. It feels like it comes at you faster because it's been slowed down for so long. But now it's like, okay, so I've built this space for myself to hold on to this pleasure. It sounds like you built space for it, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're like, oh, I'm holding space to now center what I want versus what other people want, but there's still life's demands. So how are you navigating this newfound centering of what keeps you going and life coming back the way that it did before or more?
I guess I've learned, and I still have to get better at it. I still make myself get better at it, but it's balance. Like, I've learned balancing, like, a lot of things can be important at one time, and you have to balance, like, being a business owner. People, you do get to make your own schedule, but you have to also be disciplined. And I still have to beat myself up and work on that every day. So you're trying to balance that with the adjustments of which the pandemic hit hard for a lot of small businesses, because a lot of things increased and stuff for us. So we had to, the like, supplies and stuff increased, but then your customers, well, for me, with people sitting at home, people were shopping online. So I can't say that it like totally hit a business like mine's hard, but you took some hits. And so I've had to balance that with balancing trying to, quote unquote, live my best life, like still date and, figuring out, well, what can we do? Where can we go on a date? Or when you travel, all the little things you have to do to travel now, and you're trying to balance that. And then you had kids out of school and doing school online, and Lord knows that was so terrible. NTI was so hard and terrible. not in itself, but for kids who just don't learn that way.
Yeah.
So that was a big struggle in my house. And it was a whole lot of balancing and like really keeping my emotions leveled out, because actually it was an emotional toll for children, and then it was an emotional toll for adults. And then it was that also that toll on everybody of looking at what's happening and the devastation of, because my kids lost someone they looked at as a grandfather to COVID. So it was just a whole lot. And it was the balance of it. Like I've always tried to make sure, because I'm an emotional, intuitive person to begin with. So it's a whole lot for me when it comes to emotional, when things can be overwhelming emotionally. Like I'm one of them people where I really got to like isolate and focus and all of that to balance it. I don't know. I don't even know if I answered the question. Like,
no, you're taking me through it with you, because it's like, it sounds like you have to listen to yourself more to tell you, okay, this is what's needed right now. You know, like this is what I need right now. Like I need to, whether it was because you needed to focus on your business because you're like, oh, I still got to make people's products, or now I have called to be with my kids so they can do their assignments, or like I need a vacation and me and Boo got to go. You know, we got to get up through. You know, or just like whatever is you're being called to do. Like you said, we've been conditioned, I mean, for generations to take care of everybody else. Like if you go back to like enslavement times, like they would pull Black babies off of Black women's nipples. Like, no, my baby needs to be fed first. So like it would be like nursemaids who would be supposed to be nursing their own babies, but because they were nursing, they were like, nope, the master's wife had a baby, so do the thing. So even caring for other people first before caring for ourselves and our own has been something we've been conditioned to do. So then in so many ways for us, self-care and stuff has been a bad word. So thinking about those words, because I think it's more like an umbrella of terms, right? Because self-care, you know, especially now that's like become like the buzzword that everybody's self-care, I'm going to the mall, self-care, I'm going, you know, get my feet done and my nails done. And I do love a good nails and pedicure any day. But when I say self-care, self-preservation, and self-indulgence, what do those words mean to you?
For me, it's meant like stepping out of the idea of what it meant to everybody else, and forming my own definition of it. Like I've always had my own definition of success. I've always had my own definition of so many different words, but for me, self-care didn't look like just a bath with my crystals or going outside and grounding. Like those are all things that I've always done. So it made me like really like, no, what does it really, really mean to do that? And I had to like to me, it's like, it's very broad, I guess, with me, because it meant taking some limits off of some things. Like, to be real, it meant taking some limits off of some things sexually for me. Because as you get older, you go into a whole different stage of, like, I'm 39, so you go into a whole different stage through your 30s, and you center your pleasures in that.
That's right.
And and you because you start to realize that and as women, that was another thing. Like, we're taught in that arena to have everyone else's focus, and in that arena of pleasure, we're everyone else's focus and need is before yours. And as you get older, you're like, nope, mine are. And you realize like how to make yours and centered, and it be about you. And so I had to do that. And I had to like define self-care. For me, it was traveling, because it was something I never got to do. So it was like, I realized it don't take a whole lot of money. It don't take this and that. Get your flight, book an Airbnb. Once you get to the city, figure out what to do, figure out how to have fun and do it. And I had like, those were the biggest things for me, on top of giving my business everything it needed. So I moved my office back home, and I bought something that requires me to make my business mobile. So now I have to pour into that, and that's my project. And I was like, and that's a leap. Who is an investment, and it's a leap. But I see things, like I visualize things.
Yeah.
And then I set dates for it, and then I do. That's how I manifest. So it's been, my self-care has been like actually doing and pouring myself into things that I want to pour myself into, not things that I have to pour myself into, or things that people think I should. Because believe me, people still, I don't think you should do that. That might be too much for you. And I'm like, no, I seen it. It, so I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And that's literally a conversation I had. Like, no, I seen it. I'm doing it. It's trusting yourself. And a lot of people say they do, but they don't realize that they kind of don't. When I work on something and I think something's on my path and I see it visually, like I actually see myself in that moment, so that when I get to that moment, I'm always like, see, I already seen it. I knew I was going to be here. I seen it. Like, but you really have to trust yourself. Trust that inner voice, inner thing that's telling you that's yours, that's for you. Follow that. Like, sometimes we get so scared and we're like, no, I can't do it. I can't. And we do some other thing, and you're never happy. You're never satisfied because you're supposed to go that way. So I don't run away from it. I just know it'll be figured out somehow, and I just do it. And my parents now will probably tell you she's my wild child. That's my wild child. She's gonna do what she want to do. That's how they say, she's gonna do what she want to do. But yeah, I am.
You are, but it's not that you're being impulsive. It's like you're being led, and like, and not like in a passive way. It's a very active following, because you're following like this path that has been laid for you. That's like deeply spiritual right there. Like, when you're just like, it's like you can feel it in your bones as opposed to like, I always tell people, when I'm making an impulsive decision, I feel like I feel it in my chest. But then when I'm making a decision that is like, I'm being led by this decision, I feel like I feel it in my bones. Like my bones ache with like, this is where you should be. And I think that goes into this idea of this evolution you were talking about. Like, what really resonates with me is like, as I've listened to that ache in my bones, it's like, it only makes you want to listen to it more, instead of, and like, and you don't know why, because a younger, less evolved me would have been like, I need more facts, because I love collecting facts. I love the facts. Give me all the facts. But I remember very distinctly making wrong, in quotation marks, of course, decisions based on the facts, because like the more I would make these decisions based on the facts, the more the insides of me would be screaming, no.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, like, everybody has an inner voice, and everybody has a pause button. We just don't usually, we ignore it. Like, before you do something, you always have that pause that'll be like, I shouldn't do this, or I should do this, but we ignore it. And I'm just listening more to it. And I have a whole conversation like, okay, I shouldn't do this. Why? Or I should do this because, and then I proceed, whichever way I want to proceed. And then I accept too, like, whatever the outcome is going to be. So it's really like trusting yourself and dealing with whatever the outcome is going to be. Like, it was for me, or that wasn't for me. And I learned. Like, it's never a loss. I think you always learn. So even if you go down this opposite direction, you learn something, and life is going life's gonna line you right back up.
Yeah, now let's try this again. There, I hear a lot about this disconnect between who we really are and who we think we are, because there's not that conversation that you're talking about. And I think that probably happens to everybody, but I would almost argue it specifically happens to Black women because of how we're used in the society. But like, how has like knowing, especially because you say you grew up in a super Afrocentric family, so I'm not saying nothing to you don't already know. But I know. but how has being a Black woman and any other identities that you've had that you have, right? Like including the roles that you have, how's that impacted your access to your experience with pleasure, either now or, I mean, we kind of talked about it in the past, but now also, how does being a Black woman impact your experience with pleasure?
I've had to learn and unlearn and then relearn how to make it about you, but still take care of, because it's like, again, it's my nature and I accept it now, a gift and a curse, how to be there and take care of other people. But with Black women, like you said, we've always been the caretaker, however people want to word it. The reality is that Black women have also carried like majority of the load in the household. And you had to unlearn everything that you learned in family, that you learned from religion, that you learned from traditions. Our grandmothers, what they did, and we're supposed to evolve from who our ancestors were. And they did things a certain way and went through certain things because they had to. And at the end of the day, they still, what you find out as you get older, they still found ways to center their own pleasures, even if it was in secrecy.
Yeah.
Even if it was, they had a love for reading, they hid books to read, or if they had a love for sewing and they weren't supposed to sew outside of whatever the master needed or whoever needed, they did it secretly and had parties and, you know what I mean? Like they did a lot of things in secrecy to pleasure themselves. So we get to do it outwardly and live it out loud. Even though we're still judged for how we, like absolutely. Black women still get judged for everything. Like, it's like we can't never do nothing right in everybody's eyes. I swear. You know what I mean? Like if we do it this way, we get judged. We do it that way. But we're figuring out how to put ourselves first in our pleasures and be loud about them. And we can still be there for you, and we're still going to take care of home, and we're still going to take care of self and children and the animals and whatever spiritually. If you're a spiritual person and your job is in doing readings or whatever you do for other people, like that's a lot of draining work. Like whatever you do, I think we're learning the balance of, but I'm gonna center myself, and then I'm gonna do them things, and I'm gonna make it all work, because we've been able to do that for so very long. But now we're doing it in a real way, like where we're I don't want to say the head, but we are leading our own journeys.
It's whole people.
Yeah, we've had to unlearn a whole lot, I think. Like, because you get to, as you get older, your mothers and your grandmothers and your sisters, everybody you saw a certain way, just to sit down and have real conversations with you. And you get to be like, oh, Granny did that. Oh, Granny thought this, or and you get to be like, oh, so we made it look a certain way, or we had to outwardly show things a certain way, but we were kind of still having, finding ways to center ourselves, our own pleasures as best they could, but they didn't get to do it to the full extent we can now. So I think that for me, it's like, especially I'm a pastor, I'm a preacher's kid. So it was so much for me. I had to learn and unlearn, and then make it my own. And that's been a lot of my pleasure. Like, just as a Black woman, it was just, for me, it's this process of unlearning a lot of things and then relearning them, and then re-scripting them however you need to make it yours and make it fit you and make it work for you.
What role has like those close relationships played in either shifting this relationship you have with pleasure, or supporting it, or whatever it is? What role has that played in relation to that?
I get, to be honest, like support. Like, we see you, like, coming out of your shell, or not that I had a shell, but more so I was just very much, even with my nephew, which is kids. And so people are like, I'm so glad to see you finally doing for you, or, finally able to, it's not just business, it's not just children, it's really your life's pleasures. Like you're really doing things that you find, I guess it's the only word I can use, like pleasures in, like, you know what I mean? It's not a requirement, it's not a duty, it's just literally feet up, enjoying something outside of the structure of life, and people really, like, people close to me really support it, like, girl, just do it. Or, we have those real conversations where we say to each other, like, you need to stop and do something for yourself, or go get, like you said, go get your feet and your nails done, go get a massage, go get, like, I've really had to not just time, but say I can spend the money on that. I can do that, and then have people like support it, instead of, no, you shouldn't, da 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 da. And I mean, you still have maybe the worry, but it's like, no, you do deserve to give it a go, to do it, to live. And I mean, even when I thought about leaving Louisville, like, that's something that I could see as like maybe a pleasure. I have the pleasure of getting support.
Yeah.
Even if people worry, and a lot of things that people may say is just a worry, like, are you sure? Or be safe, or do this and that. I still get the support. Whether it's with business or whatever. Like, when I leap into business, my parents supported 100%. And what do you need us to do? What do you need? What do you need? I've always had that. And a lot of people don't have that. So that's been like my biggest blessing, is having close family and friends that are like, girl, yes, do it. And then people like you who will like inbox me randomly and be like, when I was in Puerto Rico, I was so shocked by all the inboxes. I was like, what am I doing? And everybody was just like, yes, live your best life, girl. Woo. And I'm like, I'm just in Puerto Rico. But I realized that it was a big deal. Like, because I said, I've never been anywhere. I've never traveled with a man. So it was just like, wow, I'm actually here. I'm actually doing it. And then people are actually like cheering it out.
That's real life, because like I remember, and it's funny because you went on your trip this year and I did too. It was this year, same. And like two things. One, I did that same post and whatever, like, yo, I ain't never been nowhere. I'm basic AF. That's what I said. And then, and because I hadn't, very similar, I was a young mom. I went and, did the things I was supposed to do, and I was like, I got to do this because this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do, because that's what we've been conditioned to do. And it's the right thing also. But when I got there, when I tell you, I cried when I stuck my feet into the sand, like a big baby. I literally put my feet in the sand and I cried like a baby.
That one was the first trip that really was me doing something for me that like was healing for me and a whole life lesson for me. And then my niece was like, she's on her journey, and she was just like, all these trips I'm taking by myself. Like, when I saw you do it, I was like, oh, I'm doing that. I got to do that. I got to try that. And she was like, it's so exhilarating. I was like, yes. Like, we're made to be so scared of things that don't have to be scary. They really don't. Like you said, my cousin traveling the world was by herself. And I'm like, you can actually be cautious, but you are probably more protected than like when you own this path that you supposed to be on. Like, I can't even explain it, but yeah, that Chicago trip for me was, an entire metaphor of like for where I was. Like, girl, you can't see ahead of you, but keep on going.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a whole proverb right there. You can't see ahead of you, but keep on going. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So evolving, like going back to this idea around evolving, right? Describe for me, based on that and what you've learned thus far, and your intentions that you have thus far. Describe for me using your senses, because you're visual like me. A pleasure that you are looking forward to, whether that's something that's real, like, oh, next week, or imagine like one day.
This project that I've taken on with my business, like being inside of it and just out and about, moving in it, being in it, doing it. I don't know, like that's something that I don't want to say rush, but I'm anxious to get to, but I'm also trying to be patient because I know stuff is a process, and I'm one of them people where I'm like, let me hurry, like, come on, I want to get there, but I know it's a process. And when you're doing it by yourself, it's an entire process, you know, with your own money, your own hands. Even though, of course, I have the bad thing of saying it, but I have people who be like, girl, we'll help you. Like, you got me. I'm here. I'm doing it. It's a weed thing. But I always see just myself doing it. That's something that I picture, like literally picture and just smell like, I'm going to get there. I have to get there. It's going to come. It's going to happen. By next summer, it's going to be done. And I'm going to be mobile, and it'll be like the next thing. You know, for me, it's like, it's the next thing that I took a leap on and did. And I'm here. I did it. And, you know, I just can't wait to get to that. That gives me like so much pleasure, because my customers really, like, for real, my customers like make my day a whole lot of the time. Girl, like really they do, like the stuff they say, the inboxes, the loyalty, and the inspiration. Like, everybody doesn't have customers who are so personal like it. Like, seriously, like, who support me and love me, and that's why they support, you know what I'm saying? Then they end up being like, no, but I really like his product, girl.
Yeah.
So
let's be clear about that.
Yeah, let's be clear about that. But they inspire, you know what I mean? Like, everybody doesn't have customers who like inspire and push them. You know what I'm saying? If they think that they like, no, you're not. No. We need your business to exist. Like, we pushing you forward. What do you need? Like, I had a customer say, what do you need? What can I donate? What can I give you? Like, give me love offerings. It's just crazy. It's crazy. So I've definitely been blessed in that, and that gives me pleasure, just seeing myself at the next step of it.
What are you doing to center your pleasure today?
Using my nose when it should be no. I have to say that I've been more like, my communication is, you know, people always say you don't have a problem being direct, but I do have a problem expressing like how I truly feel, because I'll sugarcoat just to make people, you know, not to hit people too hard. But I've learned to really make my nose and to not sugarcoat all the time, you know, just say it like it is. It don't have to be harsh. It don't have to be mean, to say it like it is. That gives me pleasure, because I'm like, this is my real self. And like, what I want from a partner, like communicating that, and like, we really communicated, and like, we're so raw with each other. And even if it don't feel good, even if it don't make sense, you know, to other people, like, we are very open like that. And that has given me a lot of pleasure, because I know from past experiences that lack of communication, lack of being your authentic self, lack of, you know, being comfortable to say, this doesn't feel good, or this changed with me, or I'm at this point in my life, or I need this. To be at that place where you can do that, and then to be with someone who is in their evolving stage too, and to be like, okay, well, this is me, or I did this, or I feel this way. And we actually sit down and get like raw and real with it. And
yeah.
It's to be just open, I guess. Like that is my pleasure now, to be very open with how I communicate, with what I do, and telling people no, I don't feel like doing something, or I can't do something, because I had a problem saying no to stuff.
Yeah.
So that
That's beautiful. That makes me so happy. Well, I want to thank you so much for having this conversation with me. It was just as wonderful as I'd imagined it.
I love this conversation because you make pleasure such a big, broad word.
Oh yeah,
always,
because we limit
so
that just
small.
like we limit ourselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So we're not doing that. And so I think that's not what we're doing.
Wow. So in this conversation, I mean, I know I could identify with what it means to have, basically grown up with your children. Mine's almost grown. Mine is 16, so I only got a couple more years on that one. Also, with having had the examples of centering other people, whether it be her children or her partners or her family, like in her parents and siblings and those folks, or everybody else, figuring out who she is alone, who she is as a partner. I think because we're so conditioned to put everybody else first and make our pleasure. I mean, and I think we've heard this in other episodes with other people about how women and non-men basically are basically just conditioned to center everyone else's pleasure and define our pleasure by how we center everyone else's pleasure. So really watching herself learn to center herself, it definitely resonated. At the beginning of the interview, Kisha talked a lot about, really admiring that in her cousin. And even going back and listening to it and thinking about how I'm watching Kisha and it's like, but you're doing the same thing. Like maybe, that didn't mean for her, I'm going to pack up all my belongings and move to India. But what it meant is that, she walked away from a job that was secure and she didn't have any strong negative feelings about it. Like it was nothing wrong with it, but it wasn't what she wanted. And she struck out and she started her own businesses. And, freedom doesn't always mean entrepreneurship, right? For everyone. It doesn't have to, you don't have to take that story and go and follow it word for word, much in the same way that freedom doesn't always have to mean you pack up all your belongings and move to another country on the other side of the world. But what she says about not placing limits on what pleasure can mean for you, I think resonates really with any decision that we have to make that is against what, everybody else says makes sense. And if it feels good, like from the core of you, and, she makes lots of allusions to lotus flowers and really like digging in and figuring out what feels good. And not just as a passing feeling, but like what deeply feels good as she's growing into herself. And I think, I walked away from that conversation feeling like, it might for me, it definitely doesn't mean starting a business for me. I don't think that Nubia will have a Nubia Bennett Inc. anytime soon or anything like that. But it's the feeling, right? It's the feeling of this doesn't have to make sense to anyone but me. And this feels good. And in the core of me, this feels good. Whether that be about a relationship, whether that be about a life decision, or anything. It's just like, this is who I'm becoming. That's it from me today. Now I want to hear from you. How did you center your own pleasure today? Hit me up at sprinklesparkle.org.
Sprinkle Sparkle is created and hosted by Nubia Bennett and produced by me, Alex Biscardi. Our music is by Allison Cross, and Mindy Folner does our graphic design. Sprinkle Sparkle is part of the Louisville Public Media Podcast Incubator, with support from the Community Foundation of Louisville and the Eye Care Institute's Butchertown Clinical Trials. Our executive producer is Laura Ellis. For more episodes and to keep in touch, visit sprinklesparkle.org. From LPM, Louisville Public Media.
Support comes from the Eye Care Institute and Butchertown Clinical Trials, where they strive for diversity, equity, and inclusion within their staff, patients, and clinical trial participants. To learn more, visit butchertown.clinic.
Are you planning on getting a new car soon? A new car! Avoid a disappointing trade-in and donate your old car to us. We'll pick it up at no cost to you and use the proceeds to fund this podcast. Learn more at louisvillepublicmedia.org/cars.